I just wanted to show you how I keep my bicycle protected when I'm not riding it. This helps keep the dust off, and also I protect the walls from any damage potentially from banging the bicycle up against the wall. Today we're going to look at the bottom bracket and the clearance issues with these chain ring bolts, and to determine whether or not the bottom bracket is the culprit of the clicking sound, or if it is from the bolts that might be coming loose, or one might be cracked, not quite sure. Also, to verify whether or not this crank has come loose and or is twitching and tweaking. The pedals I'm going to rule out because they are, I've already serviced these and I've examined these under close detail. Is that the chain or the bearings? Don't know. Or the engagement of the chain with the cog? Don't know. A lot of people are saying that this is just a normal helicopter sound, a jet plane taking off. It's just the mechanical sound that you get with the Izumi and the Omnium fixed gear setup. And I don't mind that so much. If that's just a normal sound, the helicopter, then I'm accepting it. But what I don't accept are the sounds of ticks, clicks, popping sounds, grinding sounds, squeaking sounds, squealing sounds, friction, just normal frictioning of mechanical components. I am very accepting of, because I understand that that's the nature of the beast. This is a self-extracting system. It's a two-piece system. You have your outer cup and you've got your inner bolt that holds the crank arm and actually acts as a lever on the cap on the outside. Like I said, I like to clock this in such a way that I can use the crank arm as a lever. You see how it's a little bit like 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, the arm's at 12, the tool is at 1 o'clock, and then you just squeeze and push towards the pedal, counterclockwise of course, and just keep doing that. Just keep turning. Here we go. Now you can see it disengaging from the spindle. Splines are exposed. And there, just like that, your crank arm has been removed. Just like that. And there's your crank arm. Are there any visible signs of wear on the bearing race? It's hard to tell. I don't think so. It's all shiny and smooth. I do not feel any divots, any raised parts. Just silky smooth. Everything feels good. Everything looks good. I don't feel any resistance. I don't hear any sounds, any clicking sounds. I don't feel like it's binding or anything. That's white lithium grease in there. It's well sealed, and again, that bearing is moving freely, cleanly, smoothly. For a bicycle drivetrain that only has 1,000 kilometers on it, there's no reason why this should be making the noise that we heard in a previous video that I'm making about the clicking sound. Hambini, I like this guy. It's a new video talking about the SRAM system. Typically we're dealing with 68 and 73 sizes. One is for a road bike, the other one is for a mountain bike. And what we do is we measure the bottom bracket shell on the frame, the bottom bracket on the frame set. We measure the spindle length on the crank, and we verify that our bottom bracket shell will accommodate those sizes. So I just want to draw your attention to these two dimensions. On the drive side, we have a 24 millimeter bearing race. And on the non-drive side, you can see there's a little bit of a lip here or a shoulder. And this bearing race is actually 22 millimeters in diameter. So what I want to do is I want to measure from one bearing race to the other bearing race and get that dimension of the shaft in relationship to the shell. The shaft to the shell, the spindle to the shell. Well, let's take a look here. How many millimeters are we looking at? I see, if I hold my tape measure properly, from the edge of one bearing race to the other, we're at about 69 millimeters. I'm going to say this is probably a 68 millimeter spindle length. That is 68 millimeters. It's either a road bike or it's a mountain bike. It's either 68 or 73. Well, that is a far cry from 73. 69 millimeters or 68 millimeters is not 73. So I'm calling this 68. I'm listening to this YouTube video in the background, and this guy's talking about the tolerances that SRAM it has engineered with their system, or the lack thereof, the quality control. So just loosen that off. I'm just loosening it enough so that I can get my tape measure on the edge of the frame. Okay, I've got this far enough apart that I can take an accurate measurement. Well, it's showing 68. The bearings should be riding on the races, and it appears that they are. So I'm going to say that there's no issue with the dimensioning of the crank in relationship to the bottom bracket and the shell. The taper on these splines right here, it's very hard to see. Don't know if you can see the taper, but it causes more friction on the crank arm when tightened. So the more you tighten it, the more the tapered portion opens up wider at the top here, and it puts pressure on the crank arm, grabbing it and holding it in place. So
I'm just going to tighten this back up again. It's in good condition. Again, for something that has 1,000 kilometers on it, I would expect it to be performing to the standard that it was built with. Okay, that's plenty tight. So, push that crank arm through. Make sure it's seated properly. Dust cap. Apply the dust cap. That little wipe on the surface. You won't be able to get access to that later. Grab your crank arm. Just a little closer look here. I'm wiping off the excess grease. Just would like to take note of the wear, where you see the paint has come off from the rotation with, I'm guessing, friction with the dust cap. Not a big issue, you can't see it. No issues here, but details. Okay, get that mounted. Get your thread started with your 8mm. Try not to cross thread it or strip it. And just put a little bit of pressure on it while you're threading it on. Okay, you can see that it's closing up the gap here. As I tighten this down and I'm into the taper now, I can feel it frictioning. I'm just going to get some torque on that, and at the same time we want to check to see that little bit of wiggle waggle. No good. No good. Keep tightening it a little bit at a time. I know there's a torque specification, but I like to just go to the point where I don't feel that wiggle waggle anymore. So I don't want to over tighten it either. And it's gone. It's gone just like that. Let's listen to the crank. Get the chain out of the way. Here's the crank turning. I'm turning the pedals. I'm turning the pedals. There's no clicking. There's no binding. Super quiet. I was just checking the rear sound of the bearings. As you can hear or not hear anything. Comparative sound. This is me putting friction on the tire with my finger on the rim. Grab the chain, grab your wheel, get the chain onto the cog, pull back, get your axle lined up with your dropouts, and feed it on till it bottoms out. Grab your chain, hook it on to the chain ring at the front, and pull back on the wheel to get the tension and the alignment that you need for a straight chain and a straight wheel. Okay, I haven't even tensioned the chain yet. This is without tensioning the chain. You hear that helicopter getting ready for takeoff? Okay, I accept that. But that's still a lot of noise for something that should be a lot quieter, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Is it chain alignment? A lot of people suggest that it's chain alignment. Well, look how straight and parallel that chain is. There is no deflection, there is no twisting or curving of the chain. And all this noise is coming from here and from here. These are the sounds that seem normal. The frictioning of the chain with the chain ring and the rear cog. There's no tension yet on the chain. Very little tension, as you can see. There's hardly any tension on that chain. It should not be making that kind of noise. In my opinion, of course. Others would say otherwise. Let's put a little bit of tension on that chain and see what happens. Okay, there it is. Running. It's running. It's relatively quiet other than the normal sound of the frictioning of the chain engaging the cog, the chain ring at the crank. Pretty standard. Seems to be running smoothly, quietly. The chain tension looks good. There's a little bit of play there, probably a little bit more than I like. You can see how much movement there is. I probably will tighten that a little bit more. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. Okay, I'm going to pull back on the wheel and put the tension kind of at maximum. Got to get things lined up between the chain stay and the seat stay. Just so. There's more tension on the chain now. That's great. Okay, what does it sound like now? Same sound. Very similar. Maybe even a little bit quieter. There's not as much tension on the, or there's more tension on the chain now, as you can see. Definitely sound coming from here. Is it good? Is it bad? No. That's normal. I get that. That is not the sound that I'm concerned about, albeit it is a bit noisy, but I accept that that is a normal sound of frictioning components working together. All right, let's go for a bike ride. Remove the gloves. Nitrile coated gloves, by the way, just want you to know. Hand protection, nitrile coated. Let's go for a bike ride. Check everything out. See if all the hard work is paid off. Got my cycling shoes. Cleated. Put them on. I just did a bunch of tooling on this bike. I'm trying to focus my attention on the bottom bracket and some noise that might be present here. I can still hear that clicking. Maybe not as much. It's less now, but it's still there.